Hello everybody, David Cohen. It is Sunday. It's another time with me. Every week I am wondering what am I going to talk about. Many times this content is pre-produced. Why? Because we are traveling a lot and I have an idea and we produce and edit, actually, Yasmina does, the video. That means that some of the videos are not produced on Sunday, as this particular one. Many of them, I would say, at least 50% have been produced in the week before, or maybe even 2 weeks. Why? Because there was something important in that moment. But usually it is on Sunday. As you will also see, contrary to many other content producers, YouTubers, we did this at the beginning, but we no longer cut when I make mistakes. Why? Not because we are lazy, but it's more authentic. I hate those videos where it's going click and then click and, it looks like a Texan Chainsaw Massacre equivalent of video editing. It's bullshit. We are human beings, not robots. And if you don't like the way we do our content, door and so. That leads me to one very important point. Before that, I want to go into the detail of democracy. Democracy lives and dies with the participation of people. Participation means you participate in the political discourse, but, and that is the most important thing, since most of us don't have an education in those fields we talk about, we at least should know the basics before we have an opinion. When an idiot talks about virology during COVID or afterwards, and he is an insurance clerk, he's not an idiot because of being an insurance clerk, but he's an idiot because of daring to form an opinion without even the slightest idea of what is going on. And believe me, you cannot out-qualify specialists, experts who dedicated their lives, like, for example, Dr. Fauci. Why am I talking about this? Every time people see this Star of David, a lot of them are triggered. Great, I see the anti-Semites. Every time I make comments, like usually about anti-Semitism or Israel's reaction to the 10/7 terror attacks by Hamas, which is an Islamist Iranian crony, I get comments like, I shouldn't talk about I shouldn't talk about politics, rather stick to photography. Those who tell me this are, first of all, ignorance, fools, and idiots, and unfit for democracy. Just because I have a certain job doesn't disqualify me from being political. We all should be. As I said, the insurance clerk in some company has the right to have an opinion, but he also has the duty to inform him or herself before even going out. Otherwise, when you just follow common sense, the best education most idiots have, common sense, then you are disqualified. You are the idiot. Now, nobody knows, because I'm not making a big deal out of it, and because it's irrelevant, but nobody knows about my background, nobody knows about my professional life before, etc., etc. I just mentioned it once, and this will lead to what I want to say. I started when I graduated from university back then in the 80s. I started my professional life, my real professional life, not students' jobs during my studies, as a diplomat. My highest position was Deputy Chief of Mission, and I acted as acting ambassador during the absence of the real ambassador. One of my jobs as such, also in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, was to write political papers. Nevertheless, I studied and graduated from an American university in psychology, in law, and in politics and economics and political science, which is a combined theory, and I focused very heavily on political science. So, how dare you tell me to stick to photography? If you don't like what I say, leave. I rather have 2 followers, 1 follower, 0 followers than those who think they can tell me what to do, that to limit me will not happen. If you don't like it, just leave. Now, that was all the prelude to the announcement of me having started on Substack, photography and political channel. In due time, when I found the time to write something on both of them, I will inform you. And I'm looking forward to discussions there too. There is a lot that needs to be set straight. For example, the use of the word genocide. Until radical Muslims bent on annihilating Israel started with the word genocide, either out of ignorance or intentionally for political gain, most of the idiots who today scream the word genocide in the streets didn't even know what the word means, nor can they spell it. I know what it means. And I will talk about it. And if you don't like it, door, close. And there's my foot. Okay, I read last week something about Kodak, which really made me sad. Now we're coming to the photography part for those who want to limit me. One more thing before I continue. As a photographer, I'm political too, because everything you see around you, every decision, literally every single thing is politics. How do I take a photo? How can I move to make photos? And I myself, I'm a very political person. I grew up during Greece's military dictatorship. I participated at the age of 11, 12 in the first demonstrations celebrating the Republic. My family, in particular my father, was a very political man. He barely escaped first Nazi murder and then Soviet Union communist style prosecution. He barely made it. We have been very much involved in Greek politics to the point that my father nearly became Minister of Health and certain government. I'm not going to talk much because I want to keep you a little bit in the limbo. You shouldn't know too much of me, only what I tell you. So, everybody is, and me in particular, and once again, you don't like it.
stop
Good.
talking about Kodak.
Kodak,
Which is also political.
very political. Kodak is obviously in deep. Again, they are on the brink of financial collapse. Kodak is, as we maybe know, those who don't know, don't rely on common sense. At least try to find out on Wikipedia, which is not very reliable. So always use 2-3 sources more. Is like Leica, in a different way, basically one of the most important, iconic, and essential companies in the history of photography. We wouldn't be here without Kodak, because back then we didn't have sensors. This is for the millennials. If it's 1534 for the millennials, means I wish you good morning because of your daily routine. For the millennials, we didn't have sensors in the 70s and before digital photography. Yes, there was life before. You know, you have to tell them. They don't know much.
I'm a millennial. I'm a millennial.
Yeah, but you know that kind of millennials. Yeah? Those who are unsure about many things and face trauma at every step of the... I don't know. Do you really think I care? Gen Z, yeah, they're, yeah. So, without Kodak, not much of photography. And I remember back then when Fujifilm started to exert pressure on Kodak, I was also one of those who changed to Fujifilm because when I saw their color science, their way of handling light, it appealed more to me than this mellow Kodak. Now, people will tell me, yeah, there weren't only, yeah, tell me. But in general, the Fujifilm aesthetic is definitely different from the Kodak. And as with everything that has become too big, certainly not to fail, but a lot of companies, CEOs believe that. Kodak did not adapt in time, like Leica. Different reasons, but like Leica. And they were simply reduced to one of those until they totally collapsed. Now they found some way back into business. I like some of their new products. Actually, Kodak was my first own camera, a Kodak Instamatic. I remember all for many, many years, decades even. Until the 80s, when Fujifilm was selected to be, I think for the 1980 or 82, 84 Olympics, Fujifilm was selected as the official provider. Nevertheless, both companies had a niche. Leica was a niche. Kodak started as a niche and became very, very successful, became very big, very lazy. And that is the problem. No matter how big you are, no matter how successful you are, you can always fail, and you will fail the moment you take things for granted. What do I always say? Find your niche. Kodak forgot about their niche. Kodak forgot about innovation. Kodak forgot about observing changing market situations, changing technology. And even though they were technically providing the first digital camera with Nikon, I know somebody will tell me again the first real blah, 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 but I'm talking about cameras that were actually available, broadly available, with Nikon F5. A huge monster of a camera, excessively expensive. But nevertheless, they waited too long. Now, when we compare Leica, Leica had a long downfall. Iconic company, one of the few that survived to tell us the story of German influence on photography. Photography, for a very long time and very early on, was a very German thing. All the major lenses, Carl Zeiss, Jena, Voigtländer, Leitz, etc., were German companies. Leica struggled a lot. Also, reluctance to adapt, wrong decisions, reluctance to adapt as a continued. They were late with SLRs, relying too long on the rangefinder M3, later M4, etc. Quite late with SLRs. My father bought immediately. He always bought Leica, even though they were expensive. My father was always Leica. So this is how I came in touch with Leica. And but always very valuable and precise pieces of industry, industrial design, industrial production. But they struggled. They also had their quality issues, but they were lucky to find an vivid admirer in the person of the Austrian entrepreneur Andreas Kaufmann, who, out of love and admiration for the company Leica, injected a whole bunch and lot of money. He executed a restructuring program. He held various positions, changing positions. He was CEO, now he's on the board, he's chairman of the board. But his personal and financial input and enthusiasm saved Leica. And now for quite some time, Leica is not only profitable, they once again not only reclaim their niche, but they were able to carefully move beyond. The Q series is clearly built on the M series, but introducing more modern technologies that die-hard rangefinder fans, and I find them sometimes very, very hard to talk to discuss with, because they don't want to change anything. For them, removing this body plate, the bottom plate, was already, anathema. So Kodak didn't have Andreas Kaufmann. Kodak doesn't have anybody, as it seems. On the one hand, a lot of people talk about tradition, talk about old brands of yesteryear, the good old days, but nobody so far, and never forget that's an American company, an icon of photography at the same time. An American company at the forefront of photography, which today, for quite some time, for decades, is Japan-centered and increasingly China. They produce increasingly awesome lenses and gear, accessories, but awesome lenses themselves. So why is there nobody who steps in to do the same, essentially the same, not as a copycat, essentially the same as Dr. Kaufmann did with Leica, stripping down, taking over, injecting money, like Steve Jobs did with Apple, reduce the core to the core. What is the core of Kodak? Photography. The sensor market is lost, but they were able to come back with instant cameras. I found a few very beautiful lifestyle accessories, cameras. You cannot reinvent the wheel. Why not cooperate with Japanese or Chinese companies, but the Kodak way? Leica's cooperation with Panasonic is a very good example. I would have never bought the Panasonic version of the Leica Deluxe series. Never ever. Why? Because it's a cheap piece of plastic. The Leica company tweaked it to make it look better. They even tweaked the sensor, and Panasonic also relied on the same lens. Still, the photos are not really the same. And with Deluxe 8, they went a step further. There is no Panasonic. I find it very, very sad that a lot of companies, and Kodak is just the most prominent example, do not find enthusiasts who, out of love, enthusiasm, maybe walking down memory lane of their early days as a photographer, as a hobby photographer, as an amateur photographer, say, you know what, let us save this icon of American entrepreneurship, this icon of photography, reduce it to something solid, whatever that is, it's not my job, and return strong and rebuild our niche. You have to reinvent yourself. Kodak, unfortunately, somehow was unable to do that. And again, I find it very sad. Even though I switched to Fujifilm back then, I never hated the company. I just preferred another product. And still I returned to Kodak, but not as often again. If I had the money today to spare, just out of admiration for such a prominent company, for such a hallmark of photography, I would invest it. I would find the best managers that correspond to my understanding. And yes, I do have an idea. I've been an entrepreneur, if you want to see it like this, of my own brand, of my own product. I am the product, the service I offer. So I know where I want to go, but I need people, of course, to run with the experience, knowledge, and everything, and to run a big company and to restructure it. But I would invest that money because Kodak is worth it. Leica was worth it and is worth it. And without Sony and other help, there wouldn't be Carl Zeiss Jena today, because we find a lot of Carl Zeiss Jena and Zeiss lenses, but unfortunately they couldn't survive on their own, and there was no Dr. Kaufmann. Every time I hold a Leica camera of the Q series, I'm talking now, or the M series, but I cannot work with M series. I keep repeating it. No autofocus. I don't want to do manual focusing. And I cannot work without IBIS. This is why I was never able in my later years to use an M camera. And I hope the traditionalists will not be so much at the center of Leica's future iterations of the M series. So the bottom plate has already been done away with, and I hope to get future innovations like maybe electronic viewfinder, etc., etc. Look, Fujifilm manages to, in the X series, you can have electronic viewfinder or rangefinder style, this little window. At the same time, Fujifilm, which is mass-produced, but to very high standards, evokes very similar, of course not the same, but very similar feelings, because they follow a very similar, despite being a mass producer. But they managed to tell a story. They found a niche with their X100 series. Now going further, breaking boundaries, but carefully breaking boundaries with the GFX 100 RF, which I find is a brilliant camera, just not for me. But it doesn't have to be for me, because I'm anyway happy with the X106 and my Leica Q343. To return, we really need people like Dr. Kaufman to rebuild companies that are worth it. And Kodak is definitely one of those, because photography today enjoys such a prominence across social boundaries, across countries, cultures, whatever, generations, also because of the internet, also because of the smartphone, which introduces a lot of people to photography. And so far, Fuji is the only one to really attract them without dumbing down photography and cameras. I'm sure this has been a longer video. Yasmina tells me something about 27, 28 minutes. I needed time to make my point. It's not always easy. And since I'm not one of those robots who reads prepared paper or whatever, yeah, cut, because I'm sitting here discussing with you, because you will see it, you will watch it. Some of you will be even more disgusted. Great. Some of you, many of you, because I get these comments too, comments of support, that they see things the way I do, and that is a big honor for me. Many say, finally somebody who feels the same way and talks about it. I thank them for their support. And there are many where we have different viewpoints. We agree in basics in general, but we have different viewpoints. I love that discussion. But I'm not going to have discussions with idiots. I think those I'm talking about know it, because I unsettle them. I wish you a nice Sunday. See you next week.